I didn't hear the glass break. I only saw the red mist spray across the Christmas tree. 1 second, my little girls were laughing at my terrible Santa impression. The next, Harper was choking on blood, and Violet wasn't moving. I spent 20 years hunting monsters for Delta Force, but I never expected the war to follow me home to suburbia. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. They say you never hear the bullet that kills you, but you definitely hear the ones that miss. It was 9 p.m. on Christmas Eve. The house smelled like cinnamon candles and burnt pot roast. It was the kind of night normal people live for, the kind of night I had spent my career protecting. I was retired now. I wasn't Sergeant Mason anymore. I was just Dad, wearing a ridiculous red velvet hat, building a dollhouse while my wife, Natalie, poured eggnog. "Daddy, look," Harper squealed. She was 6, missing her front teeth, dancing in her reindeer pajamas. "Violet is stealing the candy canes again." Violet, my 4-year-old, giggled, shoving a peppermint stick into her mouth. I laughed, a deep belly laugh I hadn't felt in years. "All right, you little thieves," I said, dusting off my knees. "Santa is watching. You want coal?" "No coal," they screamed. I looked over at Natalie. She was standing by the kitchen island, texting. She'd been texting all night. When I looked at her, she jumped, shoving the phone into her pocket. Her face was pale, sweaty. "Everything okay, Nat?" "Fine," she said, her voice too high. "Just checking on my mom." I nodded, but my gut tightened. That instinct, the one that kept me alive in 3 war zones, flickered. The air felt heavy, charged with static. Then, the window exploded. It wasn't a loud bang. It was a sharp crack, followed by the sound of 1,000 wind chimes shattering. Time slowed. Adrenaline dumped into my system. I saw the debris flying before I heard the second shot. Pop, pop, pop. 3 rounds. Suppressed. Professional rhythm. "Down!" I roared, diving forward. I wasn't a dad anymore. I hit the floor, sliding across the hardwood, reaching for the girls. But I was 5 feet too slow. Violet was thrown backward. She landed in the presence, a red stain blooming on her white pajamas. Harper stood frozen, mouth open in a silent scream, before her leg buckled and she collapsed. "Harper! Violet!" Natalie screamed, dropping her glass. I scrambled to them. "Stay down, Natalie. Don't move." I reached Violet first. I rolled her over. My hands were trembling as I pressed them against her chest. There was so much blood, bright, arterial red, pumping with every beat of her tiny heart. "Daddy," she whispered. Her eyes were losing focus. "I got you, baby." I choked out, ripping off my shirt to plug the wound. "Natalie, call 911. I looked at Harper. She was clutching her thigh. The bullet had gone through her leg. "It burns, Daddy. Look at me, Harper," I commanded, voice dropping into that calm, terrifying tone I used on missions. "Focus on me. Breathe." I scanned the room. The shots came from the street, through the bay window. Whoever it was, they fired blindly into the center of the room. Or they were aiming at the tree, where the kids were. I needed a weapon, but my guns were locked in the garage safe. I was helpless. "Mason, they're not answering." Natalie sobbed, tapping her screen. "Keep trying," I yelled. I held the life inside my children with my bare hands. The smell of pine, copper blood, and gunpowder filled my nose. My nightmare had come home. Sirens wailed in the distance. Finally, "Stay with me, Violet. Look at the star," I whispered. Her skin was turning gray. The next 10 minutes were a blur. Paramedics burst in. I fought them for a second until a hand grabbed my shoulder. "Sir, let them work." I stumbled back, my hands coated in my daughter's blood. The only job that mattered, and I had failed. We rode in the ambulance. I stared at Violet's monitor. Her heart rate was erratic. At the hospital, they wheeled them into trauma. The double doors swung shut. The silence was louder than the gunshots. I stood there, shirtless, shivering, covered in blood. Natalie was sitting on a plastic chair, sobbing. I walked over to her. We needed to be together in this. "They're going to be okay," I said, voice like gravel. She looked up. Her eyes were red, but there was something else there. Terror. Mason, what if they come back? She whispered. Who? I asked sharply. Who comes back, Nat? She flinched. I don't know. The gang. Whoever did this. Gang. I narrowed my eyes. The police didn't say anything about a gang. I just assumed, she stammered, looking away. She reached for her purse. Her phone lit up. I watched her hand. She wasn't calling the police. Her thumb moved fast. Swipe left. Delete. Swipe left. Delete. I took a step back. My military mind locked onto my wife. This was a drive-by in a rich neighborhood. Suppressed shots. Controlled grouping. That wasn't a random gang. That was a hit. And my wife was deleting messages. I walked to the water fountain to wash the blood off, watching her reflection. She typed a message, sent it, then buried her face in her hands. A man in a cheap suit walked in. Tired, holding a clipboard. Mr. Miller? Yes. Detective Dominic. I'm handling the case. He looked at my bloody chest with boredom. Rough night. My daughters were shot. Do you have a suspect? Dominic sighed. Look, buddy, it's Christmas Eve. Probably kids joyriding. Stray bullets travel. It wasn't stray, I said. 3 shots. Suppressed. Targeted. Dominic laughed. Suppressed? You watch too many movies. Go home, wash up. We'll take a statement tomorrow. He was burying it. I looked at Dominic's shoes. Alligator skin. Too expensive for a cop. I looked at his wrist. A Breitling watch. I looked back at Natalie. She was watching Dominic with fear. She knew him. The pieces clicked. The targeted shots. The wife's texts. The dirty cop. The doctor pushed through the doors. He looked exhausted. Mr. and Mrs. Miller? I stepped forward. Tell me. Harper is stable. She'll walk. But Violet, she took a round to the chest. She's in a coma. The next 24 hours are critical. Natalie wailed, collapsing. But I didn't collapse. The sadness burned away into white-hot rage. I looked at the corrupt detective. I looked at my lying wife. I turned toward the exit. Mason, where are you going? Natalie screamed. You can't leave us. I stopped at the doors. The cold wind hit my chest. I didn't turn around. I'm going to get a change of clothes, I said calmly. But I wasn't going for clothes. I was going to the garage, to the wall behind the toolbox, to the things I promised never to use again. Mason, the dad, died tonight. The operator was back, and I was going to burn this city to the ground. The coffee on the hospital table went cold hours ago. The air smelled like bleach and grief. I hadn't slept, hadn't moved, just stared through the glass at Violet, my little fighter, connected to more machines than I'd used on a battlefield. Her chest rose and fell with mechanical rhythm. A nurse adjusted the 4-line and gave me that polite, distant smile they practice for disasters like this. I couldn't look away. I memorized the beeping of her heart monitor like it was my own pulse. It was my new war drum. Natalie sat across from me, pretending to read messages on her phone. Every time someone walked down the hallway, she flinched. Every few minutes, she looked at the door, not the window. She wasn't scared of losing Violet. She was scared of who might walk in. Harper lay awake in the next room, doped up on painkillers, whispering for her sister. I could hear her small voice every time the door cracked open. It was the sound that kept me from falling apart. The door opened again. Detective Dominic stepped inside, still in the same suit, still smelling like cheap cigar smoke and arrogance. Morning, Mr. Miller, he said, as if we were old friends. Any word from the doctors? I didn't answer. I just looked at him. That silence made him uncomfortable. Good. He flipped through his notepad. We canvassed the area. Nothing yet. Looks like a random act of, it wasn't random. He looked up, smirking. Right, you said that last night. But we found no evidence of a suppressor, no shell casings worth. They used subsonic ammunition. You wouldn't find standard casings, I said, my tone even. Check the angles of entry. High ground. Backyard fence line. Not the street. Dominic shrugged. I'll run it by forensics. He turned toward the door. Try to get some sleep, Mason. You can't fix everything. Not anymore. When he left, I saw Natalie watching him again from her chair. Their eyes met for a split second. Then she quickly looked down at her lap. That tiny flicker between them broke something inside me. I left the room without a word. Outside, the wind was sharp, evening light fading. I drove home, palms gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. Every bump in the road flashed images of red pajamas and shattered ornaments. When I reached the garage, I turned on the single overhead light. The familiar smell of oil and gunmetal greeted me. My old world. I moved aside the tool rack, revealing a false panel behind the hanging wrenches. Biometric lock. Same fingerprint it always was. The safe hissed open. Inside, a stripped-down M4 carbine, sidearm, combat knife, encrypted comm units, and a weathered notebook with coordinates scrawled in a shaky hand. Tools of a life I'd buried under years of pretending to be normal. I took everything out piece by piece. Running fingers across cold steel felt like finding a lost part of myself. The sound of a magazine locking and clicked louder than any Christmas bells. I wasn't armed for revenge yet. I was arming myself to survive what was coming. I placed the carbine on the work table and then noticed something odd. Paperwork. Natalie's handwriting. Receipts for cash withdrawals, weekly, small enough to avoid bank flags. Payments sent to an unregistered number. A text tone chimed softly. The sound came from the kitchen sink. I crouched, flashlight in hand, and saw the edge of black tape peeling under the cabinet. A burner phone. Cheap model. Battery sticker still fresh. The screen lit up. Incoming message. Did you get the package? I stared at those words. My thumb hovered over the screen. Whoever sent that didn't know they were messaging the wrong person now. I texted back only 2 words. Which one? Seconds later, 3 dots appeared, then vanished. Then came the reply. The girls. Wanted to scare. Didn't mean to hit both. My blood ran cold. So it wasn't random. It wasn't a mistake. It was a warning gone wrong. I typed back fast. Who sent you? No response. The signal went dead. I called a contact I hadn't spoken to in years, Grant, an old military buddy turned lawyer. When you're Delta, you never really retire. You just step sideways. He answered on the first ring. I heard, Mason. It's all over the private boards. You okay? They shot my girls. Silence. Then, quietly, tell me what you need. Not what, who. I need the name of anyone using burner traffic in this grid last night, between 8:30 and 9:30. Pay whoever you have to. I want this traced. Grant sighed. You know this isn't something you come back from, right? I wasn't planning on coming back. He didn't argue. He never did. I hung up, wiped my fingerprints from the phone, and crushed it under a wrench. At midnight, I drove back to the hospital. Natalie was asleep in the chair beside Harper's bed, phone clutched in her palm. I took it from her hand gently. Face ID unlocked instantly. My thumb scrolled through her messages. Most were harmless, friends, family. But one thread was hidden under a different contact name. Jules, Vet Clinic. I opened it. My heart stopped. There were weeks of messages, romantic, explicit, manipulative. The man's real name was Julian. He owed someone money. He'd promised her it would be handled. The last text Natalie sent, 1 hour before the shooting. He'll be gone by 9. Do it quiet. I stared at those words until they blurred. All the pieces fell into place. The target was never me. It was him. Julian. The coward she was protecting. They wanted to send him a message. My family just happened to be standing in the way. I looked at my daughters through the hospital glass. Violet in her coma. Harper sleeping with bandaged legs. My wife asleep, pretending to be innocent. No tears came this time. Just silence. I turned the lights off and walked out of the hospital. Set the car on course toward the coordinates Grant texted me 5 minutes later. A rundown motel outside the city where one of the phones on that burner network had last pinged. The soldier in me came back full awareness, heart rate calm, breathing steady. Every sense sharpened. The war wasn't coming anymore. I was taking it to their doorstep. The coordinates Grant sent me led to the edge of town, where streetlights flickered and died. The Starlight Motel, a place where desperation checked in by the hour. The neon sign buzzed with an irritating hum, casting a sickly pink glow over the parking lot. I parked my sedan 2 blocks away in the shadows of an abandoned warehouse. I didn't walk in through the front. I moved through the overgrown brush at the rear of the property, my boots silent on the wet pavement. I was wearing dark civvies, jeans, a black hoodie, and a baseball cap pulled low. Underneath, I had the cig tucked into my waistband and a tactical knife in my boot. I found room 104. The lights were on, the curtains drawn but thin. I could see a silhouette moving inside. It was frantic, pacing back and forth. I didn't breach yet. Patience is the difference between a soldier and a corpse. I needed intel. I slipped a small fiber optic camera under the door jamb, a little souvenir from my last tour. The screen on my wrist lit up. Inside, a kid, couldn't be more than 20, was shoving clothes into a duffel bag. Skinny, tattoos on his neck, terrified eyes. On the bed lay a pistol, a Glock with a threaded barrel for a suppressor. There it was, the smoking gun. I checked my watch. 2 a.m. I needed to know if he was alone. I watched for 5 more minutes. No one else. He zipped the bag, grabbed the gun, and tucked it into his jacket. He was running. I moved to the side of the door. As he opened it, stepping out into the cold night air, I struck. I didn't hit him. I simply stepped out of the darkness and grabbed his wrist, twisting it until the ligaments snapped. He screamed, but I slammed my other hand over his mouth, driving him back into the room. I kicked the door shut behind us with my heel. Before he could process the pain, he was on the floor, and I had my knee on his chest. I stripped the gun from his jacket and tossed it onto the bed. Quiet, I whispered. It wasn't a request. He stared up at me, eyes bulging. Please, don't kill me. I didn't know what. I eased the pressure off his mouth just enough for him to speak. I was just the driver. I swear. Ryder made me do it. Ryder. A name. Who is Ryder? I asked, pressing the barrel of my own gun against his knee. The boss. Local crew. He said Julian was hiding at the house. He said Julian owed him 50 grand. We were just supposed to scare him out. The pieces were locking together faster now. Julian. The man Natalie was texting. Why my house? I asked, my voice dangerously low. Because the girl, the wife. She gave Julian a key. She told him he could crash there while you were gone. The world tilted on its axis. Natalie gave him a key. She invited this danger into our home. I leaned closer. Where is Ryder now? The shipping yard. Dock 4. He runs the containers out of there. Please, man, I have a kid. I looked at him. He was a scumbag, a criminal who drove a shooter to my house, but he was also terrified. I didn't kill him. I wasn't a murderer. I was a father cleaning up a mess. I stood up, zip-tied his hands to the radiator, and gagged him. If you make a sound before sunrise, I come back. And I won't be talking. I left him there and drove straight back to the hospital. The rage was different now. It wasn't hot anymore. It was cold. Absolute zero. When I walked into the waiting room, it was nearly 4 a.m. Natalie was awake, drinking coffee from a styrofoam cup. She looked exhausted, her eyes rimmed with red. When she saw me, she stood up, relief washing over her face. Mason, where did you go? I was so worried. She reached for me, but I stepped back. The movement was small, but it hit her like a slap. She froze. What's wrong? She asked, her voice trembling. I found the driver, I said. The color drained from her face so fast, she looked like a ghost. What? Who? A kid. He told me everything, Nat. I don't know what you're talking about. She tried to laugh, a nervous, jagged sound. Mason, you're tired. You're imagining things. I stepped closer, invading her personal space. He told me about Julian. She stopped breathing. Her coffee cup fell from her hand, splashing brown liquid across the sterile white floor. Mason, wait. He told me about the dead. I continued, my voice relentless. He told me about the key you gave him. He told me that while I was deployed, fighting to keep this family safe, you were letting a gambling addict sleep in our bed. It wasn't like that, she hissed, glancing around to see if anyone was watching. It was just, we were friends. He was in trouble. I was trying to help him. Help him. I grabbed her shoulders. You helped him by putting a target on our daughters' backs. They weren't shooting at me, Natalie. They were shooting at the man you brought into our lives. She broke then. She collapsed against my chest, sobbing uncontrollably. I didn't know. I swear to God. Mason, I didn't know they would come to the house. Julian said it was just money. He said he would pay them back. Where is he? I asked. I didn't hug her back. My arms hung at my sides like dead weights. I don't know. Don't lie to me. I warned. A nurse at the station looked up, startled. I lowered my voice, but the intensity remained. You were texting him. You told him to run. Where is Julian? She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. She saw the look in my eyes, the look of a man who had nothing left to lose. He's at the old boathouse near the marina. My dad's old place. I gave him the code. I let go of her. She stumbled back, clutching her chest. Mason, please, don't hurt him. He's just scared. He should be, I said. I turned around. I looked through the glass one last time. Violet was still fighting for every breath. Harper was tossing in her sleep, nightmares already haunting her. I'm going to finish this, I said to the air. Mason, if you leave, if you do this, we're done, Natalie cried out. You'll go to prison. You'll lose us. I stopped at the elevator. I looked back at the woman I had loved for 10 years. The woman who had shattered our world for a cheap thrill and a secret life. I already lost us, Natalie. You made sure of that when you opened the door to the wolf. The elevator doors closed, cutting off her sobs. I was going to the marina. Julian was going to answer for every drop of blood on those Christmas presents. And after him, Ryder. The sun was just starting to crest over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and blood orange. It was a beautiful morning for a reckoning. The marina was quiet at dawn. Mist hung over the still water, and the sound of seagulls echoed like distant ghosts. My tires crunched over the gravel as I pulled up to the old boathouse Natalie's father used to own. The wooden planks were rotted, paint peeling off the walls, the sign half fallen that once read Dock Rentals. I killed the engine. The air was sharp, heavy with salt and decay. I stepped out, scanning my surroundings. The pier ahead, a broken fishing boat, and a silver sedan parked behind the shed. Its engine was still warm. Someone was here. I moved silently, keeping low. Years of muscle memory guided every step. Boots barely made a sound on the wet boards. I reached the door. Voices inside. One low, desperate, the other trembling. I pressed my back to the wall, pulled my cig free, and listened. She said it was done, man. A voice stammered. She said you'd take care of it. Wipe the slate clean. I told you to stay out of sight, Julian. I muttered under my breath. Then I heard the response, the voice that made my blood pressure spike. Ryder. Calm, confident. The predator's tone. She lied to you, Jules. That woman of yours was supposed to pay what you owed, not beg for mercy. But now 2 kids are in the hospital, and that's bad for business. Julian's voice broke. I never meant for that to happen. No one ever does, Ryder replied. But you know what happens when someone crosses me. I pushed the door open and entered without a sound. 1 step. 2. The smell of cigarettes and cheap rum filled the room. Julian was on his knees at the center, shaking, hands tied. His dark hoodie was stained with blood, probably not his. Ryder stood behind him, wearing a leather jacket, shaved head, calm as stone. A .45 rested at his side. He turned his head slightly, sensing the shift in the air. His instincts were good, but not Delta good. Morning, I said, my voice cutting through the silence. Ryder turned fully, eyes narrowing. The gun started to rise, but I was faster. I kicked the pistol out of his hand and shoved him into the wall so hard the planks cracked. He grunted, tried to swing, but I pinned him by the throat. This is for Harper and Violet, I growled. He smirked even through my grip. Didn't expect the famous Delta man himself. Heard about you from one of my guys. Mason Miller, right? The ghost. You sent your dogs to my home. You almost killed 2 little girls. He chuckled, a dry, cruel sound. Not my dogs. She called the shot. His words hit harder than any punch. Who? Your wife. He spat the word like a joke. She wanted the problem gone. You were that problem, soldier. She figured if the hit looked messy, she'd collect everything. House, money, no questions. We aimed for you. Guess her timing was off. I tightened my grip until the veins in his neck bulged. Lied to me again. He only grinned wider, eyes daring me to look deeper. Go check her phone. Tough guy. She's cleaner than I thought. Wiped messages, changed SIMs, scrubbed it all. Smart woman. Behind me, Julian whimpered. She didn't mean to. She told me she panicked. I turned and looked at him. The coward was crying now, nose running, shaking like a leaf. You should have stayed gone, I said quietly. Those girls were innocent. Ryder laughed again, voice hoarse. What's next, soldier? Gonna kill us both? Doesn't bring them back. I drove my fist into his solar plexus. All the air left his body. He crumpled, but I caught him by the collar, keeping him conscious just long enough. You're not dying yet, I said. You're going to talk. You're going to give me every name, every location, everyone who touched this job. Then, maybe, I'll let you crawl out alive. Ryder spit blood onto the floor and gave me a wicked grin. There's no one else to name. It's her, Mason, your perfect little wife. Ask her where she was 30 minutes before the shooting. She'll lie. They always do. The door creaked. Then I heard the unmistakable crunch of tires outside. My instincts flared again. Back up. I tightened my grip and yanked Ryder toward the back exit. Julian tried to speak, but I glared at him, silencing him instantly. Through the back window, I saw 2 black SUVs roll up. 4 men with rifles stepped out, scanning the yard. They're here for me, Ryder wheezed with a pitiful laugh. You won't make it past them. Watch me. I shoved him into the boathouse's old office and closed the door. He still had information I needed. Julian was screaming now, but his panic was white noise. I grabbed one of the old life jackets, wrapped it around my chest, and slipped into the water. It was freezing enough to numb the shock, but I moved under the pier like a shadow. The men above started shouting, boots thudding on the wood. When I surfaced 50 yards away, I watched them drag Ryder toward the SUV. They weren't cops, too professional, too sharp. Mercenaries, not gangsters. Someone had money to burn, and this wasn't just a street debt anymore. I climbed onto the embankment. My lungs burned, my hands shaking, not from fear, but from realization. Ryder wasn't the endgame. He was cleanup. Someone wanted to erase loose ends. By the time I got to my car, Grant had texted me. Caution. One of your wife's financial accounts flagged by Bureau Cybercrime. Possible money laundering route. Want me to dig deeper? So Ryder was right. Natalie wasn't just cheating. She was helping Julian funnel dirty money through our family accounts. Funds now tied to weapons trafficking and laundering rings. And she'd used our address. Our home. I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes looked dead. She killed more than trust. I muttered. She destroyed everything. I started the engine. The next stop wasn't anywhere on a GPS. I had coordinates to a warehouse Ryder's crew used as a stash. Grant sent them with the note. Feds won't move for 48 hours. You've got time. I looked out the window once more, toward the fading horizon. Natalie's betrayal had just turned from emotional to lethal. The woman who shared my bed helped pull the trigger that destroyed our family. I was done asking questions. It was time to make people answer them, one by one. I didn't go home. Home wasn't a place anymore. It was a crime scene wearing my family's scent. Instead, I drove to the edge of the docks, where container cranes stood like sleeping giants. The address Grant texted sat between 2 warehouses, one abandoned, one alive. The alive one buzzed with a generator's hum and muted voices, Ryder's people. I parked 2 blocks away and made my approach on foot, weaving through the shadows of stacked metal. Every sound mattered. The click of boots, the hum of a truck engine starting somewhere in the distance. I moved like I used to in foreign alleys, calculated, cold, unseen. At the south entrance, 2 men smoked and talked. One wore a bomber jacket, the other a beanie and thick gloves. I counted seconds, measured timing, and when they looked away, I slipped behind an old forklift and came up fast. One blow to the throat, a push, a drag. The first hit the concrete before he understood what had happened. The second turned, half ready, but my forearm was already under his chin. He went down silent. I took their weapons, cheap automatics. Not Delta quality. These were street-level trash guarding something they didn't understand. Inside, I moved between rows of crates. The smell of motor oil hung heavy, mixed with salt and gun lubricant. A door stood at the far end, faint lamplight glowing under it. I heard laughter. One voice, low, slick, recognizable even in fragments. Ryder. He'd made it back here faster than I expected. I inched closer, hearing the conversation. Told her not to panic. But no, Natalie had to screw it up, Ryder said. You think she's gonna flip? Another man asked. She already did, Ryder replied with a chuckle. She just doesn't know it yet. Natalie. They were still talking about her like she was one of them. I pushed closer, ear to the crack in the door. She told me Mason suspected something. But he doesn't have proof, Ryder said. Let her think she's safe. We'll use her again if we need leverage over Julian. Can't leverage a dead man. The other man grunted. I froze. What do you mean dead? Ryder asked. The marina job. He didn't make it. Someone found him. You said that warehouse was clear, the sound of a chair dragging. That wasn't my call, Ryder snapped. So the cleanup team, they'd killed Julian. But not before I got the truth. And now Natalie was sitting in a hospital under their watch, thinking none of it could reach her. I opened the door with my shoulder, gun out, not shouting, just silent intention. Ryder looked up, shock crossing his face for half a second before his hand darted to his belt. I fired first, bullet hitting the table edge, splintering it. Chaos erupted. Men dove for cover. I dropped one, then another. The sound echoed endlessly in the high-ceiling warehouse. Ryder bolted for the back exit. I chased, hearing his boots slam against metal steps. He darted through the door, sunlight stabbing across my vision. I grabbed his jacket mid-step, slamming him into a cargo crate. She wasn't scared of the gang, I hissed. She was scared of you. He coughed blood, almost laughing. You think she's innocent? She's been playing us both. You didn't figure that out. Try me. She told me when to pull the trigger. Mason. Not me. Her. My finger almost pulled before my brain caught up. Lie. He grinned. Check the time of the call on my burner from Christmas Eve. She said, he's about to walk into the living room. That was my signal. My stomach twisted. I hadn't even looked at the clock that night. I'd walked over to the tree. Harper was dancing. And Natalie, she had been standing near the window. The timing matched. I hit him once, hard enough to drop him. I'll find proof. You won't have to, he groaned, spitting blood onto the dock floor. She already confessed, just not to you. Cop named Dominic's got the texts. Dominic. The detective who told me to go home. My chest went cold. You're lying. He managed a weak grin. Go home, soldier. Check the cop's phone. You're fighting the wrong enemy. I didn't kill him. Not yet. I cuffed him with his own belt and left him bleeding by the crate. By sunset, I was back at the hospital. Dominic's car sat out front, unmarked but familiar. Inside, Natalie sat with Harper, pretending everything was okay. Dominic stood at the end of the hall, talking quietly to a nurse before spotting me. His expression faltered. You were told not to interfere, he said as I approached. You were told to investigate, I answered. But you're too busy covering for her. He frowned. Miller, you're making a mistake. I stepped in close, whispering. You keep her safe because she's paying you. right? You get money whenever she makes one of those mysterious transfers from my account." His jaw tightened. That was enough confirmation. I smiled faintly. "Yeah, thought so." He turned slightly, hand grazing his holster. But I was already backing off, calm. I didn't need to fight him yet. I just needed him rattled. Then his phone buzzed. I looked down. On the glowing screen, a single text flashed before he silenced it. "Finish it at the hospital tonight." He saw me read it. His face drained. For 10 seconds, neither of us moved. Then he grabbed the phone, stepped back, muttered, "You don't know what you're doing," and walked off fast. My pulse slowed again. Ryder wasn't bluffing. Natalie had started something darker than either of us realized. Dominic was part of it, and something was coming tonight. I turned and looked through the patient room window. Harper was asleep. Natalie was staring down at her phone, thumbs shaking as she typed. I couldn't see the screen, but I could read her lips. One word, one name, Ryder. She was texting him again. The realization hit me like recoil. I wasn't the hunter anymore. I was living in the target zone again. And this time, the hit squad was coming inside the hospital. Hospitals have their own kind of silence. Not peace, pressure. The kind that hums in the air before something goes wrong. I'd heard it before, in safe houses seconds before a breach, in ambush zones right before the world erupted. And now, standing under those fluorescent lights, staring through the windows of the pediatric ICU, I felt it again. Natalie sat by Harper's bed, pretending to pray, thumbs scrolling her phone instead of holding her daughter's hand. Harper's leg was wrapped in cast and gauze, her face pale but calm under sedation. Violet's room was a floor below, machines whispering for her because she couldn't breathe for herself. The text Dominic got, "Finish it at the hospital tonight." It wasn't a bluff. I walked to the vending machine outside and bought a coffee I had no intention of drinking. I just needed the cover, the clinking quarters, the fake casual posture. As I scanned the hall, 2 new orderlies had come on shift. Strange faces, big hands, stiff posture. Not medical, tactical. Their eyes lingered too long on the stairwell cameras, then each other. I knew that look. They were waiting for signal. I slid the coffee into the trash, checked my reflection in the vending glass, made sure my eyes were calm again. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a message from Grant. "Grant, FBI tracing accounts. Dominic's bank tied to offshore shells. Looks like he's the courier, not the boss." Me, "Find the boss." "Grant, you're looking at her." I didn't reply. I already knew what he meant. "Natalie." That's when the elevator dinged. One of the fake orderlies stepped out, pushing a linen cart that wasn't hospital issue. 2 new, military-grade casters, the kind used to move gear. The second followed behind with a mop bucket. Nobody noticed. Night shift fatigue made people blind. I walked into the staff lounge, found what I needed, one of the security feeds on a mounted monitor. Camera 3, West Wing. The 2 orderlies stopped by a maintenance door, swiped a card that shouldn't have worked, and disappeared inside. They were going for Violet's wing. I grabbed my jacket. There wasn't time to call anyone. If Dominic was involved, calling security would just speed up the damage. I took the stairs, boots hitting the metal in rhythm with my own heartbeat. By the second-floor landing, I heard the first muffled thump. A suppressed weapon. Another. 2 shots. By the time I reached the door, I'd already flipped into the part of myself suburban life tried to bury. The operator mode where emotion switches off, but senses sharpen like glass. I pushed the door open and slipped inside. The hallway smelled faintly of solvent and ozone. The lights flickered once, then dimmed as some breaker tripped. Shadows lengthened. One orderly lay face down by the nurse's station, shot in the back. Wrong uniform, wrong shoes. That meant there was only one hostile left moving. Footsteps echoed ahead near room 214. Violet's room. I moved fast and low, hugging the walls, tracking the sound. I caught a glimpse through the small window in her door, a man lifting in 4-pole, snapping cords aside, moving toward the machines. His gloved hand reached for her breathing tube. I kicked the door open hard enough to make him spin. My hand was already on his wrist before the suppressed pistol cleared its holster. We slammed into the monitor cart, knocking instruments to the floor. He was good. Not a street thug, a trained hitter. But he'd never been Delta. He swung the barrel toward me, desperate. I redirected it mid-motion, twisted, and snapped bone just above the elbow. The silencer sizzled as one round went into the ceiling tile. He screamed, tried to grab a backup blade. I buried a right cross into his jaw and a left elbow into his throat. He hit the ground choking, air bubbling from his crushed windpipe. I stripped the weapon, safety on, then tore his mask off. His face was swollen, tattooed. A gang insignia Ryder's crew used. Dirty cop collaboration confirmed. Violet's machine beeped erratically from the commotion, her little body trembling under the shock of noise before stabilizing again. I stood there for a second, chest heaving, hands shaking just once before I forced it to still. I checked the dead man's pockets. A phone. One text thread, unsent draft on the screen, job done. Second target next floor. Harper. Rage took form like ice in my veins. I sprinted down the corridor, caught the reflection of another figure heading toward the stairwell, Dominic. He had his badge out, waving off a nurse, face etched with fake concern. I was behind him in 4 strides. Drop it, I barked. He spun, startled, hand flying toward his weapon, but I was already there. I slammed his wrist into the wall, gun clattering to the floor. Mason, wait, where's the other one? I shouted. Dominic grimaced, panting. They didn't tell me they'd hit both wings, I swear. I'm not. I hit him again, this time enough to make him talk. His words spilled fast. She called Ryder after you left the docks. Said you'd gone rogue. Said the kids had to be silenced before the cops traced the bullets back to her account. I didn't know they'd actually. Who's she? His mouth twisted. You know who. Natalie. The hallway lights flickered again. The nurse at the station screamed as another shot cracked through the upper wing. I cursed under my breath and shoved Dominic toward the wall. Stay here. I ran. Turns, corridors, shattered glass under my boots. Smoke alarms wailed. Somewhere, a code red announcement blared. I reached Harper's room and saw the second shooter halfway through the window frame, trying to escape after missing his mark. Harper was crying on the bed, clutching her leg, eyes wide with terror. I drew the stolen pistol, centered on movement, and fired once. The man's shoulder burst, sending him tumbling backward out the second-story window onto the grass below. I went to Harper, wrapped my arms around her, whispering, "You're okay. You're safe. Daddy's here." She was shaking, speechless. The floor shook with the impact of first responders flooding the building. Sirens roared outside. By the time I looked back at the window, Dominic was gone. And so was Natalie. I found her car missing 30 minutes later. She hadn't even stayed through the chaos. Her phone was off, her purse gone. I stood in the empty parking lot, hospital lights flashing red and blue across my blood-smeared jacket, the cold wind biting down hard. Grant called again. Mason, listen, FBI traced new movement. Offshore wire transfer left an hour ago. Same account that paid Ryder. It's Natalie's. Destination unknown. I stared out into the night, my reflection warped in the hood of my car. She's running, I said softly. And she's not running alone. Grant hesitated. What are you going to do, Mason? I loaded the spare mag into the sidearm, eyes hard. What I do best. Hunt. Because if she wanted to disappear, she should have known one thing. Delta doesn't lose targets. By sunrise, the hospital was locked down like a war zone. News crews were parked outside, sirens still flashing, reporters calling it a gang retaliation attack. I watched through the back in trance as detectives barked orders and medics wheeled out the dead shooter. None of them looked at me. They didn't realize the story ran deeper than their badges could see. I'd been in places like that before, where truth got buried before it ever saw daylight. But this time, I wasn't the hired ghost. I was the father of the targets. Grant's message came through again. Warrant pending. Dominic suspended. Natalie flagged for questioning. Intercept before she crosses state line, headed south. So she was running. The last thread of family I had left was now the one I was hunting. I left Harper under police protection. She'd be safer among strangers than with a father hunted by both cops and criminals. I kissed her forehead, whispered, "Daddy's coming back," though I wasn't sure if that was true. Outside, I stole an unmarked police sedan from the secondary lot, Dominic's. His files sat in the glove compartment. Receipts, offshore accounts, burner sims, and pictures. One photo froze me. Natalie, sitting across a diner booth with him, their heads close, her hands on his wrist. The betrayal ran deeper than I thought. My wife hadn't just lied. She'd built alliances. The drive south toward the coastal line was long and empty. The further I went, the more it felt like the country forgot it ever had people like me. Gas stations shuttered, roads cracked. The sun hung low, pale gold over the hills. Grant's voice came through the earpiece. Tracked her car's last ping. Route 45, old service station. She ditched the phone 30 minutes ago. Someone's helping her, I said. There's chatter, he replied. Federal frequencies lighting up. Somebody wants this quiet and fast. Looks like she sold intel too. Mason, classified stuff from your old ops days. She routed it through Ryder's people. I gripped the wheel tighter. Then she didn't just betray her family. She betrayed the flag. The service station sat crooked on the edge of nowhere, its open sign flickering, one pump still working. A rusted van idled on the side. I shut the stolen sedan off a quarter-mile back, approached on foot. The van's door was ajar. Smell of cigarettes and gasoline. Music faint through static, old country station. Inside, a duffel bag lay unzipped, stuffed with cash wrapped in federal bands. Next to it, a photo frame of my family, the one from Violet's birthday party last year. Natalie kept it with her. But someone's fingerprint oil smudged across the glass. It wasn't hers. Movement came from the garage office. I drew my pistol and entered through the bay door. Nathaniel Grant stood there, my old commanding officer from Delta, now older, suit instead of fatigues. He looked at me the same way a man looks at his reflection years after the mirror cracked. Grant, I said slowly. I told you not to chase her, Mason. You're in on this? He sighed. The Bureau recruited her months ago. She was supposed to feed intel on Ryder's smuggling ring, not marry herself to it. She got greedy. Started selling your unit's locations, your names. I tried to contain it before it bled into civilian fallout. But then the kids got caught in the crossfire. I lowered my gun. So now what? You want me to stand down and let her vanish? He stepped closer, voice low but firm. If I wanted that, you'd already be cuffed. But she's not alone anymore. She's with someone bigger, someone whose name you know. He opened a file folder. Pictures of Dominic, Ryder, Natalie, and a fourth man, one I hoped I'd never see again. Felix, I muttered. My former teammate. Discharged dishonorably years ago for arms trafficking. Grant nodded. He's backing her. They're selling old ops intel to foreign buyers overseas. Tonight, Black Ridge Airfield, 9 p.m. I took the file. My face hardened. You want her alive? Grant hesitated. You kill Felix. Bring her back breathing. The Bureau wants leverage more than justice. I'm not their tool anymore, I said. He looked at me, weary. Then do it for the right reason. Night came fast at the airfield. Black Ridge was nothing more than a forgotten runway flanked by storage sheds. Floodlights flickered in gusts of wind, the desolation humming like a warning. Through binoculars, I saw her. Natalie, standing near a twin-prop cargo plane, her coat whipping in the wind, hair tied back. Calm, confident. Like this wasn't escape, it was victory. Felix was there too, pacing near a crate marked parts. His weapon hung loose across his chest. I moved around the perimeter, slipping through shadows of derelict vehicles, circling the tarmac. My heartbeat slowed to combat pace. Infiltrate, isolate, eliminate. Then I saw something that pulled the breath from my lungs. Two men unloading another crate from the plane. Inside it were files, marked D-Force missions, confidential. My team's past. My classified life. Everything she'd stolen from me, now packed to sell. Felix was laughing at something she said. She smiled back, that familiar soft smile. The same one she used to show me when pretending everything was fine. I lined up my sights. Grant's words floated in the back of my head. Bring her back alive. But at that moment, I didn't feel like a soldier anymore. I felt like a ghost watching the ruins of his life move on without him. Felix turned away, briefly alone. One clean shot could end it. My finger rested on the trigger, trembling slightly. That's when headlights flared across the far edge of the airfield. SUVs. Black. Government issue. Too many for backup, too soon for luck. Grant hadn't told me everything. This was bigger. Felix saw it too. He shouted, grabbed Natalie's arm. She yanked herself free. You said we had time, she screamed. He threw her toward the plane stairs. Then run. But she didn't. She spotted me coming out of the darkness, rifle slung low, eyes fixed on hers. For the first time since that night, I saw fear. Honest fear. Mason, she said under her breath, just loud enough for me to hear as I closed the distance. The roar of engines swallowed her voice, wind whipping both our faces. You can't stop this, she shouted. It's already done. I can stop you. Felix opened fire, bullets tearing sparks across the tarmac. I dove, rolled behind a crate, returned with two short bursts. One punched his shoulder, another ripped into the generator behind him, showering sparks. Fire erupted, lighting the night in hellish orange. Natalie ducked and bolted toward the plane. I dropped Felix with a shot to the knee, then sprinted after her. She reached the stairway, turned, and aimed something small and black at me. A detonator. I didn't want this, she screamed. The crate markings flashed again, explosives. I froze, fingers tightening on my weapon, every muscle knowing this was the turning point. Put it down, I said quietly. You'll kill yourself. I already did the night I let him in. She whispered, tears cutting through soot on her cheeks. Then she pressed the trigger. The blast ripped through the hangars, a wave of heat throwing me backward into the dirt. Through ringing ears and choking dust, I saw the plane split apart in fire. For a second, I thought she'd gone with it. Then, movement. A figure crawling away from the wreckage, burned but alive. Natalie. I staggered up, grabbed my weapon, and started toward her. This wasn't over. Not yet. Smoke rose from the wreckage like a signal to hell. The airfield glowed orange with firelight, metal twisting and popping from the heat. The plane was gone. Felix was down somewhere behind the flames, and Natalie, my wife, my betrayer, was crawling through the ash trying to survive the mess she'd built. I moved through the wreck, gun drawn but heart burning hotter than the fire. Every instinct screamed to put her down, but another voice, the part of me that still remembered Harper's laugh and Violet's tiny hand around my finger, kept me steady. She heard my boots crunching on gravel and turned, coughing smoke. Mason, stop, it's over. I stared down at her, jaw tight. You said that when they killed our daughters in front of the tree. Her face twisted in pain and guilt so raw it made my chest ache even as rage boiled in my veins. I didn't know they'd come for our kids. I swear. Stop lying. I snapped, kicking the detonator out of her hand. You were in it deep with Felix. You knew what he was using you for. You gave him my intel. You funded Ryder's crew. You built the perfect betrayal. She shook her head, lips trembling. Felix said he'd make them back off if I paid what we owed. He said nobody would get hurt. You owed him because you gambled our future. I shouted. All those missing payments. Those nights you said you were helping your mother. You were feeding criminals. Her eyes darted toward the runway behind me. I turned just fast enough to see movement in the smoke. Felix, limping, rifle raised. I spun. Two shots split the air. One burst the dirt beside me. The other took Felix square through the chest before he could fire a third. He dropped backward, coughing blood. I followed his collapse, keeping my gun trained on him. He was still conscious, grinning through it. "She did it for you," he gasped. I knelt beside him. "You used her." He shook his head faintly. "She used herself. Money, excitement, everything you wouldn't give her. You came home broken, Mason. She wanted more than your silence." His breath rattled out. The grin stayed frozen on his face as he died. Natalie sobbed into her hands. "He's lying, Mason. You have to believe me." I looked at her, burn smeared, crying, broken, and for a moment I couldn't separate truth from lie anymore. Every version of her flashed in my mind. The woman who made pancakes with the girls, the one deleting texts in the hospital, the one calling the shots over blood money. The woman I loved was gone long before this night. Sirens wailed in the distance, federal units, finally closing in. I grabbed Natalie by the coat and pulled her to her feet. "You're coming with me. You'll tell them everything." She struggled. "They'll kill me before I speak." "That's not my problem." I dragged her toward a maintenance truck parked near the fence line. The flames behind us turned the windshield to liquid gold. I shoved her inside, started the engine, and sped off into the woods that bordered the airfield. Grant's voice cut through my comm earpiece seconds later. "What the hell happened, Mason? We're reading explosions." "She blew the plane," I said. "Felix is dead. I've got her. Bring her in now. FBI wants her for questioning." "Yeah," I muttered, eyes locked on the cracked road ahead. "And she'll walk out free because the Bureau needs a scapegoat, not justice." "Mason, don't do anything stupid," Grant warned. I killed the line. We drove in silence for miles, the sound of the tires and Natalie's ragged breathing filling the dark. She stared out the window, avoiding my eyes. "You won't understand, Mason," she whispered. "You think it's all black and white, enemy or ally. But I did this to protect us, to save us from the life you brought home." "The life I brought home." I barked out a laugh, bitter and sharp. "I was out there so you could raise our kids in peace." "In peace?" She shot back suddenly, voice rising with desperation. "You came home a ghost. You didn't talk. You didn't feel. You looked at me like a mission report, not a wife." I was already alone before Felix ever called. Her words hit deeper than bullets, but not deep enough to stop my hands on the wheel. "So you picked the one road guaranteed to destroy everything left." She didn't respond. Her silence said enough. I followed an old gravel path out to a cliff overlooking the inlet, a place I used to take the girls fishing. The storm clouds were moving in now, lightning flickering over the water's dark mirror. I stopped the truck, left the engine idling. Natalie looked around, confused. "Why are we here?" "This is where it ends," I said quietly. "No lawyers. No deals. You tell me who ordered the hit on our house, and you get to live long enough to see justice." She looked at me, trembling. "You wouldn't. Don't test me." Rain started to fall, soft at first. Then she broke, tears mixing with the downpour. "It wasn't me who gave the kill order, Mason. It was Dominic. He told Ryder what time you'd be home. He thought the insurance payout would cover the debt. I was supposed to keep you distracted." I froze. The memory of her standing by the kitchen window on that perfect Christmas Eve shifted clarity. Her texting, the way she avoided my eyes right before the shots came. "He set the time," I muttered. "Yes," she whispered. "But they didn't know the girls would be there. I tried to stop them. I swear." I lowered the gun a fraction. "Dominic. The same cop who buried the report. Who left the hospital when the attack went wrong." A fresh, colder anger surged through me. This wasn't over, not by miles. Grant called again, voice frantic. "Mason, listen, Dominic's gone off radar. Bureau lost his car on the interstate. We think he's heading your way." I looked into the darkness beyond the trees. Headlights glowed faintly in the far distance, cutting through rain. One vehicle, coming fast. "I see him," I said. Natalie's voice was barely audible. "What are you going to do?" I racked the slide of my weapon, eyes never leaving the lights ahead. "Finish what he started." The first car reached the bend below the cliff road. It stopped. Door opened. Dominic stepped out, rain glinting off his gun. "Mason," he called into the storm, voice echoing. "It's over. Walk away." I looked down the barrel of my weapon, thunder rumbling like artillery overhead. "No," I said, stepping out from behind the truck, rain running down my face. "Not until my girls get peace." Lonely lightning cracked the sky as both of us squared off, soldier versus the system that rotted from within. And in the middle of it, behind me in the truck, Natalie watched, silent, knowing only one of us would walk away when the thunder ended. Rain hammered down on that lonely cliff road, each drop hitting like a countdown. The sky was black, thunder rolling across it like artillery fire. I stood there, gun steady in my hands, facing the man who'd orchestrated everything, the man who turned my home into a battlefield. Detective Dominic, the cop who smiled in my face while covering blood with paperwork. His trench coat whipped in the wind as he raised his weapon. "You don't have to do this, Mason," he called, voice steady but eyes calculating. "You shoot me here, they'll call you the killer. Everything you've done gone. You already killed everything I had," I said. My voice sounded calm, but it wasn't calmness, it was control. The same control that came before pulling a trigger overseas. Only now, I wasn't in any desert or jungle. I was home, and this was the last mission. He smirked. "You think this ends with me?" "Natalie hired the hit, not me. I just cleaned it up." "You're pointing your gun at the wrong one." I didn't look back, but I could feel Natalie's stare from the truck behind me. Her sobs had gone quiet. I wasn't sure if it was guilt or fear anymore. Dominic took a step closer. "You were always the soldier, the blunt instrument. You couldn't protect them because you didn't know how to live without war. Deep down, you know that's true." "Maybe," I said quietly, "but I know how to end one." My shot broke before the thunder did. Dominic spun as the round hit his shoulder clean, the impact spinning him against the hood of his car. He fired back wild, rounds tearing into the dirt as I moved closer, steady, relentless. He tried to raise his weapon again. I shot once more. The bullet shattered his gun, ripped his hand open. He collapsed, screaming, clutching it. "Who gave the order, Dominic?" I demanded, standing above him. Rainwater and blood mixed in the gravel between us. His voice cracked through the pain. "You already know." "Natalie." He nodded, coughing blood. "She signed everything over, insurance, savings, property. She gets everything when you're dead. You were the target from the start. I just made sure it looked like gang payback." Behind me, the truck door slammed. "Natalie," I shouted, turning. She was running toward the edge, rain soaking her coat, hair plastered to her face. The look in her eyes was wild, lost, like someone who finally saw the ghost she'd created. "Stay where you are." I yelled, but she didn't stop. "I never wanted this," she screamed over the storm. "I just wanted a way out." Of all the lies I'd heard from her mouth, that one hurt the most, because maybe part of it was true. I closed the distance, my boots splashing through mud as I caught her arm before she reached the cliff's edge. "You already had a way out. You just had to tell me." She sobbed, struggling against my grip. "You don't understand, Mason. You came back different. You scared me. You scared the girls. I thought if I paid them off, if I fixed everything, the money, the past, it would end. And you still chose a trigger over truth," I said, shaking my head. "You destroyed your family to save yourself." She looked up at me, tears filling her eyes. "You think you're any different? You killed for a country that forgot your name years ago." Lightning split the sky, reflecting the war in both our eyes. Hers, frantic and guilt-driven. Mine, empty and unyielding. Behind us, Dominic moved. I saw it in the puddle's reflection, the glint of steel. He'd grabbed a knife from his boot. Everything happened in seconds. He lunged. I shoved Natalie aside. The blade slashed across my arm. The sting barely registered. I twisted, grabbed his wrist, and drove my knee into his ribs. Once. Twice. The knife clattered to the ground. I didn't hesitate. A final blow. My fist cracked across his jaw. and he dropped like a lifeless puppet. The silence that followed was deafening. Only rain, thunder, and the steady rhythm of my breathing. I looked down at Dominic's body, one more ghost added to my long list. I felt nothing. Natalie stood a few feet away, shaking, staring at what I'd done. "Now what?" she whispered. "You kill me too?" I lowered the gun. "No. You live with what you did." Her legs gave out. She hit the ground sobbing, clutching her coat as if she could still hold her old life together. Flashing blue lights appeared through the rain. Grant's SUVs, the FBI. I could see agents stepping out, shouting orders, weapons drawn. I holstered my sidearm and raised both hands. "Over here," I shouted. "It's done." They rushed past me, cuffing Natalie first, reading her rights as she wept. Grant met my eyes. There was no pity there, only quiet respect. "She'll face everything, Mason. We've got the wire transfers, the accounts. You did what we couldn't." "I didn't do it for you." Grant nodded. "No, you did it for them." He glanced toward the sky, where faint dawn light began to break through the storm. The war was over, or at least this one. I walked back to my truck, blood mixing with rainwater on my sleeve. The adrenaline drained, leaving only quiet exhaustion. "Where will you go?" Grant asked. "Home," I said. "To my girls." He didn't stop me. As I drove away from the cliff, I checked the rearview mirror one last time. They were pulling Dominic's body toward the car. Natalie sat on the ground, head in her hands, surrounded by agents. She looked small, defeated, not the enemy anymore, just a tragic reminder of everything I lost. By the time I reached the open highway, the first sunbeam cut through the clouds, landing on the distant horizon. For the first time since that Christmas night, I didn't feel fury, just exhaustion, and maybe, buried deep down, peace. I turned on the radio. Static. Then, faintly, the beginning of a Christmas song. The same one that had been playing when I last saw my daughters by the tree. The same melody that had turned into the soundtrack of loss. Now it sounded different. Softer. Like a promise that the war inside me was finally ending. 2 weeks later, the snow that had fallen over the suburbs had finally melted, leaving behind wet streets and the faint smell of winter fading into spring. I stood outside the same hospital where it had all begun, the place where my world first shattered, and looked through the glass as doctors and patients hurried inside. But this time, I wasn't walking in to fight a war. I was walking in to keep a promise. Harper had been moved to physical therapy. She was stronger now, smiling again, clumsy on her crutches but determined. The same spirit that used to light up our living room still burned behind her eyes. Violet, she was awake. The coma had broken 3 days ago. Her first words were simple, soft, almost fragile. "Daddy, are you okay?" I didn't cry right away. It took me hours. Years of holding everything and finally cracked that night beside her bed. When I walked back outside, the quiet didn't feel like guilt anymore. It felt like peace trying to crawl its way back in. Natalie was facing trial. The headlines called her the Delta Widow, painting her as another suburban tragedy. I didn't go to the hearings. Grant said the evidence spoke louder than anything I could say. Dominic's recorded call logs, Ryder's ledgers, Felix's encrypted drives. Their web of deceit folded in on itself. Justice was finally speaking a language I didn't need to translate into violence. But even with their names erased, ghosts don't vanish. They linger. Every Christmas light, every caroling tune, every photo frame still reminds me of that one night. Yet somehow, that pain doesn't crush me anymore. It pushes me to keep moving, to keep building something worth protecting again. I still visit the range once a week, not to train for war, but to remind myself what control feels like. I still check every door twice at night. Habits like that don't die. They just find quieter reasons to exist. Sometimes, when Harper wheels Violet around the park, I catch myself smiling, because I know the monsters who stole their innocence are gone. And for the first time, my girls are laughing again. Not pretending, really laughing. I realized revenge never brought me peace. But truth did. Closure did. Watching them smile. That saved me in ways combat never could. And maybe that's what justice actually looks like. Not fire, not fury, just peace surviving long enough to rebuild. As for me, I'm not Delta anymore. Not a soldier. Not even the man I used to be before this war began. I'm just Mason, father, survivor, and someone learning to live again after walking through hellfire and coming out breathing. And maybe, just maybe, this is the kind of ending the ghosts of my girls' laughter wanted me to find. Now a question for you. If life ever tore everything you loved apart, what would you fight for first, revenge or forgiveness? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'll be reading every single one. And tell me, where are you watching from? Which city? Which country? I love knowing where my stories reach across the world. If you've been here through Mason's journey, thank you from my heart.